Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Really quick one this morning. We've got a new unique belt that's coming out in the Blight League, and that is Siegebreaker. What Siegebreaker does, first and foremost, it's got a few all-round useful stats on it. Strength, maximum energy shield, maximum life, chaos resistance, and then minions have 5% chance to taunt with hit-on attacks. This is a minion-oriented belt, nothing more, so that is a useful mod, but it's something that's pretty easy to get on an Abyss duel too. So essentially, yeah, that's all upside having that line. The special thing about this belt though is your minions spread Caustic Ground on death, dealing 20% of their maximum life as chaos damage per second. Now the Necromancer Ascendancy already has an option at the moment. This is obviously subject to change. The Necromancer Ascendancy is getting overworked in the 3.8 expansion. But the Fleshbinder Ascendancy notable passive skill has, amongst other things, your raised zombies spread Caustic Ground on death, dealing 50% of the maximum life as chaos damage per second. And then there's a series of other mods that make Fleshbinder something you would definitely have on any build that was planning to use zombies. Now, multiple sources of Caustic Ground don't stack, so I think you're going to be taking either or. You're not going to use both the Fleshbinder node and Siegebreaker, unless Fleshbinder gets overhauled in a way that means that they work together. Now, in terms of various minions, you'll notice that this applies to all minions. It's not just to zombies. Zombies are some of the higher hit point minions anyway. I was doing a quick look around at the hit point scaling on zombies, and they're default hit points. So that's before any sources of extra hit points from the support gems or from your character skills or anything like that. Their default hit points are of the order 11.5 times the square of the raised zombie gem level that you're using. So if you're using it at level 20, it's something of the order 4600. If you're using it at level 30 gem, then it's something of the order 11,000. That was just the line of best, not the line, the curve of best fit that I could fit through the various data that was given for those zombies. That's the baseline hit points. And of course, you can scale it up a hell of a lot with things like minion life support and just all sorts of other things on the passive tree. So that's one way that you might scale up both Fleshbinder and Siegebreaker. But there's a couple of other minions that are not zombies that are worth considering as well. My first thought was Mirror Arrow. Mirror Arrow is a skill that's usually used as a way of It's usually used in PvP as a trick way of making your opponent think you use Blink Arrow. However, what it does, it's like Blink Arrow, the travel skill, the bow travel skill. However, you actually stay where you are and you generate a copy of yourself that then fires as though it was you, but it is where you've set off Mirror Arrow to start from. I thought this might have been a useful option. Unfortunately, it's not as good as I thought it was. Minion life on this is just not quite there. And so, for instance, if you have a look at the level 20 version, the base hit points is 1807. There is a little bit of minion life on the gem, but it's just not enough to really make it work. So, Mirror Arrow we can largely scrap. Zombies simply do the job better. Summon Stone Golem, though, is interesting. Stone Golems have a lot of hit points, as you will have seen if you've ever used them beyond about gem level 18 or so. You'll find that Stone Golem is one of the few golems that really does scale up in durability as you start entering harder and harder content. So for instance, there's plenty of reasons people don't tend to use Stone Golem these days, mostly chaining projectiles, but it is the case that Stone Golem will stay alive in most tier 15-16 maps if you link it. Now, Stone Golem is not an offensive minion. It has a small amount of damage and it grants you a lot of life regeneration per second, but it has a lot of hit points. At gem level 20, the base hit points on it are 9,486. And at gem level 30, which is actually something you can manage now with the Cold Iron Point unique dagger that I discussed in another video, you're looking at 24,000 there. The other thing that's really important with Stone Golem is that by default you can only have one Stone Golem active at a given time, or one Golem in general. And there are some ways of increasing that limit to 2 or even a little bit higher than that, but generally speaking, your limit for the number of golems summoned is pretty low. What you can do with this to really exploit the fact that your minions spread Caustic Ground on death is that if you summon a new stone golem when you're at your golem limit, your oldest golem will actually die. It doesn't just go away, it doesn't just despawn, it is considered to have died. And so that's a way that you can potentially use the Siegebreaker heavy belt in conjunction with it. So my suggestion for how you might try building around this unique belt, and I will say that this is conjecture only, I am not guaranteeing that this will work, is that you will use Cold Iron Point as one option for your weapons. Your other one is weapons that have non-ailment chaos damage over time multiplier. Now, I need to make sure that Caustic Ground is indeed scaled by Nakdot, or Caustic Ground that originates from your minions dying is actually scaled by Nakdot, and I really want to test that in-game when the Siegebreaker unique belt is added, so I can't really confirm that will work. But Cold Iron Point it'll add 3 to the level of your Stone Golem, which will dramatically increase the amount of damage that your Siegebreakers, Caustic Ground explosions will deal. The other option is to automate casting of minions in some way. And there's a number of ways you could do this. The most ridiculous one that I can think of is to use Cast on Critical Strike with a Golem skill. And now if we have a quick look at Stone Golem, it has a 6-second cooldown, which you would need to invest heavily in trying to decrease that. I don't know how long this Caustic Ground lasts, but it may well be possible that the Caustic Ground can be kept to pretty much full uptime just by virtue of having cast on Critical Strike with your Stone Golem. So yeah, that's something that I would be considering. You would then need to look for sources of reduced cooldowns, such as the Shaper. It's either a boot or a belt mod or both. I believe it's both, and all sorts of things like that. So that's your first option that comes to mind. Second option is to have a cast when damage taken zombie setup. And if you really want to automate that, you can add in the Heartbound Loop unique item. Heartbound Loop has the unique modifier on it that you take 350 physical damage when one of your minions dies. This can then potentially trigger another cast when damage taken. However, because everything is so sensitive to minion hit points here, and minion hit points are very sensitive to gem levels, cast when damage taken may be difficult to really use well. And that's because cast when damage taken is limited in the spells it can trigger by the minimum level of the gems that it's attached to. So if cast when damage taken is minimum level 60, then it can trigger attached minion skills, and not just minions, of course, other skills as well, but it can trigger them up to a minimum level of 60 as well. And the difficulty is that the higher the minimum level of cast when damage taken, the higher the damage threshold becomes. I'm not sure what the right balance will be, but generally speaking, I think that cast when damage taken linked to minions, used in conjunction with Siegebreaker, may just not work as well as people might be hoping. So in any case, there's a lot to think about with this belt. I'm not sure that it's going to work all that well, but it's certainly cool. And the last thing is that we don't know what this, whether this is some sort of roll range. We don't know whether 20% is the top of a roll range. Maybe it's even the bottom. Maybe that this scales between 20 and 35 or something like that. And also, maybe it's been, maybe Fleshbinder has been reworked so that they stack together. Time will tell on that front. If you've got any questions though, fire away below. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one.